Unlike Donald Trump, I will always, I promise you, put the middle class and working families first.
Donald Trump knows nothing about service. It's pretty hard to provide service to others when you're too busy looking out for only yourself. Again and again and again, Donald Trump made decisions to weaken this country to strengthen his own hand. He mocked our laws. He sowed division and chaos amongst our citizens. And that's to say nothing of his record as president. He froze in the face of the global COVID pandemic, and our neighbors died because of it. By not addressing COVID, he drove our economy into the ground. And I just want to set the record straight, because facts do matter, and there's not an alternate set of facts.
That there's not an alternate set of facts would become a roaring applause line was not something any of us could have predicted. But that kind of campaigning, rooted in the facts and setting the record straight, and that forward-looking optimism is paying off for the Harris-Walz ticket politically. New polling from the Cook Political Report shows Vice President Harris now leading or tied with Donald Trump in all but one swing state. And now the chorus of Republican voices warning that Trump's old playbook is backfiring right now is getting very loud. Last night, a Republicans for Harris online rally with the motto, "It's okay to be a Republican and vote for Kamala Harris," was attended by 73,000 people. Things are getting so dire for the Trump side that even Nikki Haley, who's endorsed Trump, is going on TV to sound the alarm over on Fox News.
I want this campaign to win, but the campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is. It's not going to win talking about whether she's dumb. It's not, you can't win on those things. The American people are smart. Treat them like they're smart.
The American people are smart. Treat them like they are smart. When you have to give a note like that to Donald Trump, you might be in trouble. It's very start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Editor-at-large for the 19th and host of the podcast, The Amendment, MSNBC political analyst Aaron Haynes is here, plus political strategist and MSNBC senior analyst Matt Dowd is back. Also joining us, former Republican Congressman, MSNBC political analyst David Jolly's here. We are joined as well by NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn Hilliard, you are at a Trump rally that they're not calling a rally because it's not the size of a rally, and it seems they don't want their rally to be compared to the size of the Harris-Walz rallies. But tell me what this event is. Is it people in a venue with a podium in the middle and remarks planned?
Nicolle, this event is being billed by the campaign as an economic address. It's not a rally, despite it looking like one. And I just want to be clear, the campaign has structured events like this frequently over the years, right? The campaign sometimes has one idea of the theme, but then so often Donald Trump, he may refer to a few lines, in this instance about the economy, but then, as he so often does, go off a script here. This one is being billed as an economic address, frankly, after 3 weeks in which Donald Trump and his campaign have lacked a theme, have lacked focus. You heard Nikki Haley there bemoan the fact, but it's not just Nikki Haley. It's strong Donald Trump acolytes, those who have been ride or die with him through the years, including in these last months, who have been, I would say, gloomy over the prospects of this campaign, acknowledging that not only has Donald Trump suggested that the crowd size for Kamala Harris has been fake or questioned her race, but also even the message that he has attempted to deliver on policy and substance has been fraught and difficult. If you just take the economy, right? You have inflation inflation here that is under 3% now. Compare that in 2022, when in October, right before those midterm elections, Republicans were largely running on the same message. At the time, inflation was 7.5 percentage points. If you look at the border crisis, right, there was a record number of migrants who were crossing into the United States in October of 22. Compare that to what is in place right here in the summer of 2024. It is a record low during the Biden administration for the number of border encounters by the Border and Patrol. And so this, for the Trump campaign, is coming at a time, another example, violent crime. We have seen year over year violent crime, homicides drop in major American cities here. So for Donald Trump, it is not just a contrast in terms of the visuals between the Harris campaign and his campaign, but also on policy, which his own team wants him to get back to. Right now, this is a difficult time because he wants to put the focus on the Biden-Harris administration, yet some of the numbers and some of the messaging that he wanted to run on here in these final 3 months are facing difficult numbers and difficult realities based off of pure statistics at this point.
It's so interesting, Vaughn, because what is covered is that his advisors and his allies want him to get back to policy. But what you're reporting and what the data bears out is that on the issues where he feels like he has an advantage, the facts don't line up the way they might have at another point in time. What's Plan C?
I think it's a good question, Nicolle, because let's be very clear. This campaign infrastructure that he has surrounded himself with, Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita, Jason Miller, these are key campaign advisors that have allowed him to run on whatever message he has chosen to run on. Sometimes that means even standing on stage as January 6th defendants sing the Star-Spangled Banner, right? It has meant calling those individuals patriots, right? It has allowed him to bemoan the state of the migrant crisis, the number of migrants that are coming into the United States, and that they're stealing your jobs. They're coming from insane asylums. They have allowed Donald Trump to run his own campaign messaging for the better part of almost 2 years now. And up until this point, it won him a Republican primary, and up against Joe Biden, it had him leading in polling in battleground states. But that's not the race he's running against now. And I think that is what all of us that are reporting on Donald Trump are looking at, but also those who are allied with him. I was just talking with somebody who is connected to that world who was questioning where do they go from here, because they could very well try to fire one of the key campaign advisors. But what does that do them? Because organizationally, infrastructure-wise, they have implemented what Donald Trump wanted in terms of a ground game operation, in terms of a focus on election integrity and putting resources towards being able to challenge election laws and potentially in the weeks after the election, challenge voting tabulation. And so right now, this campaign, they have done what Donald Trump has wanted. And I think it is a question now, where does Donald Trump want his where does he want him to go? And I think this last week is an indication. And it's a question is, could anybody, Kellyanne Conway, could somebody get into his ear at this point and convince him that there is a different path forward?
Matt Dowd, I come to you because I'm wondering how much that matters, right? I mean, it looks like there's been a structural reshaping of the race. And a lot of the myths that were unchallenged are being challenged aggressively all day, every day, including on Fox News. I mean, Nikki Haley is someone who speaks to former Trump voters. Let me play, or I'm going to read it, actually. She says, don't assume people are going to bend the knee, that 20%, their ideas are still out. What they like about Kamala is that she's being hopeful. She's talking about a way forward. They don't want a former president talking about the past. You've now got permission structures from evangelical Americans, from thousands, tens of thousands of Republicans who are saying voting for Kamala Harris isn't a Democratic or Republican decision. It's a patriotic decision. Let me play Georgia's former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan making that argument.
And I think it's important for us to remind ourselves, just because we vote for Kamala Harris in 2024 doesn't mean we are Democrats. It just means we are patriots. What story do you want to tell your kids and grandkids? Do you want to tell them when they ask about this election, when they ask about this chaotic period of time, this temporary moment of insanity for the Republican Party, do you want to tell them that you voted for a morally bankrupt person, a womanizer, an indicted felon, a convicted felon, just because he had an R next to his name? Or do you want to tell them that you had the courage to vote for somebody that was morally decent, that was a steadier hand, that you disagreed with on a handful of policies? I hope that answer is that you had the courage to vote for somebody that is decent.
Matt Dowd.
You know, I think this is an important conversation because I think the thing that has not been talked about enough is the actual psychic shift of this race in a fundamental way that seldom happens in politics, even especially this close to Election Day. What happened a few weeks ago is Joe Biden stepped back and then pushed and then said he endorsed Kamala Harris in this race. That was like him stepping on the fault line of our politics, and the tectonic plates fundamentally moved. And when those tectonic plates moved, what happened is the facts that were on the ground began to line up with people's feelings, because what held back the Democratic ticket wasn't the facts. The facts were always there. It's how people felt. And for some reason, this psychic shift from Joe Biden, where people felt sour, where people didn't feel right, where people begrudgingly said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to vote for that, all of a sudden changed. And what happened dramatically? Vice President Harris's numbers, favorability numbers, have improved by 20 points in 3 weeks. 20-point improvements in her favorability numbers. How people feel, who judges best, who works best on the economy, has went from a dramatic advantage of Donald Trump to basically even today. And that's a fundamental shift. And how people feel optimistic and hopeful about the direction of America has fundamentally changed. And so people have argued the facts now for months and months and months and months, and the public seemed to be impervious to the facts. But all of a sudden now they're no longer impervious, because their feelings of the race has fundamentally changed. And that's the problem that Donald Trump and his campaign have. And I, struggling through this as a strategist, just to sort of, put it up and see how you can fix this, it's very hard to fix it when there's been that psychic of a shift in a race.
Matt, with that said, take me through how you see the data that's out today. The new data is the Cook political report. And then I think yesterday or earlier this week, we had the new New York Times polling, which puts her ahead in most of the battleground states.
So my view of the data right now is they're actually underestimating Vice President Harris's support. The Cook political report data came out of the field August 2nd. The data was out 12 days ago. So it hasn't been in the field. It was gone 2 weeks ago. And so to me, the last 10 days have only improved the vice president's position. There is a Monmouth poll out in the last 2 hours, a national poll, that had the race as close, as right on as anybody in 2020. They had Joe Biden winning the race in 2020 by 5 points. He won it by 4.5. As of today, the vice president has a 5-point lead nationally in this race, in a very A-plus polling firm in the course of this. And so I think when we discuss the Cook political report and the New York Times political report and all that, all good news, but I don't think it's near as good news as what I actually think reality is today. And that's why I think you're seeing the aggression. That's why I think you're seeing the floundering by Donald Trump and his campaign. That's why you're seeing the discussion of, they know this data that I'm telling you. They don't think it's a 1-point race anymore or a 2-point race. They know it's a 4 or 5-point race as of today.
Matt, one more question about strategy. I mean, my sense is that what Trump had, in terms of political strength among his supporters, was electability. And that seemed to feed on itself after the debate. And so what you're seeing, or I wonder if some of what you're seeing is that when robbed of electability, because he's not likable, because he's not trustworthy, because he's not right on the issues, as Vaughn is ticking through inflation and crime and immigration, there wasn't anything else. So if people don't trust